observatory, I have started looking at observatory like more than 20 years ago in a hydrological way. And then we evolved towards a more integrated way, looking at many more disciplines. And that was my interest to come to India, because here we settled from scratch in 2001 environmental observatory that was not called critical zone at that time, which had a very nice property. Means we were looking at a big catchment, some 10,000 kilometers square, which had a very huge rainfall gradient. So it's in the south of Karnataka. It's a transect across the plateau from the Western Ghats ridge in the west, where you have a rainfall reaching 7,000-8,000 millimeters per year. And in few kilometers, like 40 kilometers, you decrease down to 600 millimeters. So you have one order of magnitude less. And it's a flat area because it's a plateau. It's the same kind of a bedrock, but under the influence of a huge climatic gradient. And this observatory is settled in the river, which is called Kabini, which is a tributary of the Cauvery River, going southeast to the Bay of Bengal. And this Kabini River has several tributaries that are perpendicular to the gradient. So you can study small catchments that are on same bedrock and under different influences. So that was a very beautiful laboratory to study the impact of rain and the climate on the processes governing water transfer. And the second interest was the human effect on this observatory was very different also according to the transect. So there are many drivers that are different and can be studied. Of course, the second reason for my interest to come here was a very interesting and stimulating collaboration with a partner at ISC, which, as you know, it's a great institution with very brilliant people. And this interaction, most of the French people who came at that time were coming from a naturalist background, means observation, then hypothesis, then maybe theory. While our colleagues from ISC were more doing theory and doing theoretical exercise, like solving numerically or analytically equations of water transport, using most of the time data from the literature and try to build a theory. So the encounter was quite stimulating because they were much better than us in theory, and we maybe were having a better feel of how you can ask questions from observation of the reality. And this is how this team was built, and has grown and evolved and became quite efficient and productive. And now we have a beautiful site, beautiful network of collaboration, and that's why I'm interested to work here.
When did the term critical come into your business? When and how?
In fact, in France, the term critical zone came quite late. As you might know, this is a term that was coined by geochemists who were interested in weathering, because weathering is a main process to control the CO2 balance at the geological scale. So I think this concept is maybe more than 10 years old, and it became like very important in our community as a federative concept, I would say 6-7 years ago only.
And did it change the way you do science, since it got a new label? Maybe it's just a new label and under a new flag you sail like you sailed before? Or does it change somehow the perspective on what you're doing, or how did it change your science?
I won't say it has changed our science. Maybe it's easier to convince colleagues. I think we were several of us already convinced by concept like integrated systemic research, transdisciplinarity, or this kind of terms. But knowing that there is a community that is growing, that is more and more visible in conferences, etc., with using this term of critical zone, is maybe easier to convey quickly what kind of objective we have and how we want to build databases, build long-term information, and then make them useful for a broad community of scientists. So it's a tool rather than a change of paradigm, I would say, for us as scientists.
And you're a hydrological engineer?
No.
No?
No, I am an agronomist and was working on water and soil in the Vado zone, and then expanded to watershed studies, hydrology. But I'm not trained as a hydrologist anymore.
But in your field of expertise, does the term critical play any role? Where does it occur? Apart from critical zone and what is meant by that, but just in your science, are there, where does the word term critical or the phenomenon of criticalness occur, like threshold values or whatever? Is there something?
Vulnerability first.
Huh?
Vulnerability. Yes?
Yeah, this is what I was trying to explain. I mean, to me, if I understood well the concept, the term critical is just to mean that it is a narrow envelope which is fragile and it's a support for life and etc. This kind of thing this concept was existing. People working in soil, they don't use, usually soil scientists, they don't use the term critical zone, but they are still defending the same kind of thing. Maybe in a narrower way, in a sense, they say the soil is the envelope. So the critical zone is maybe a bit wider than the soil, but the idea that you have to protect this tiny piece of also this tiny layer of the surface of the earth, which is a basis for the interaction between life and minerals, I think is there in the scientific community for a long time. Then the way to handle it, the way, you have a large part of the soil science community, for example, was interested during many decades on soil formation and phylogeny, like how soil derive for each other. Like the idea was to create the same kind of phylogeny that you have for life, rain. Like, can you have some kind of family, classes, species of soil, and then so this attempt was was organizing the work in soil science for decades, up to the point that probably many soil scientists realize it's not going anywhere. We will never have something really functional, and maybe it's better to talk about toposequence or to look at the soil in the way they function vis-à-vis their properties and their services they provide to life, to humans, etc. So there was a kind of a shift of paradigm. But no, I think the concept of critical zone is really a way to put a flag on a community and to an object. Maybe that's why I'm not really comfortable with putting so much of how do you say, passion or so much of involvement in an object. To me, in science, we have scientific questions and we have objects. And usually objects we consider that as a way to prove a theory which is broader, more generic. But I was trained not to define myself by my object, but rather by my questions. And so the term critical zone is an object. It's defined geographically, but it doesn't say anything about the question you have. So the question for me is, what are the tools, what are the concepts, what are the way to couple this discipline around this object? So maybe this object, critical zone, is a very nice object and quite important. It has an implication for the sustainability of life, whatever, but it is still a playground. It is just a place where you find it is interesting because in this place you will advance science, because you can ask questions in this area that maybe it's more difficult to ask somewhere else.
But to some regard, Latour integrates some sort of animistic point of view. Yes, he says, or perhaps you know, that even matter or object may have own needs, our own intentions, our own affordances. Yes, or Michel Serres, perhaps you know him also. French philosopher says, okay, nature gives something to us, but we have to give something back. Yes. Would you agree with such kind of scientific or not scientific statements?
Latour is talking of the parliament of things, that each thing has got a voice or should have a voice.
I think he's not the only one to talk about human or non-human stakeholders.
This is all this hybridization.
So,
yes. No, he's not the only one, of course.
How does this relate to your work? Does this play a role in your work? Because I like the term that you say this is an object, and this object has an agency, maybe, or political dimensions, or
yeah, but no, that doesn't play a role for me. Even though I have worked with anthropologists or ethnologists and discussed, I have done some other work in France on algal blooms due to agricultural activity, and I'm kind of used of interacting with them, telling the algae are also stakeholders in this, and they should be considered like you should consider the system not only by the actors like stakeholders of the society, scientists or farmers and activists or whatever,